Judith Kafwembe. I am a mother of 5, a wife to 1, and friend to many. I currently work for a Big 4 firm, and I am a senior manager in the Africa Growth Office. A little about how I got to where I am right now. It's actually a very twisted story. So when people talk about how success looks like this, for me it's this, and all of that. I actually started, when I finished school and my parents asked me, what do you want to do? Believe it or not, I didn't know. I really didn't know. There was a lot of stuff that I had a feeling I needed to help people. I didn't know how. And I thought maybe HR would do that. And that's what I really wanted to do. And I remember my mom coming all the way, because we were in Kitwe at the time. We came to Lusaka. I think we couldn't find a school place for me. And my dad was like, I think tired of all this, waiting for this child who didn't know what they wanted to do. So he says, okay, right. Next month you're going to ATC, Chingolo, you're going to do accounts. I said, oh, okay, great. Accounts sounded like a great thing. I think it was still fairly new at the time, which will show you just how old I am. But it was like he thrusted me into that, and I did it. And I did my AAT, moved on to SEMA, and the thing is, I wasn't happy at all. I was miserable. But because I had somewhat invested so much time into this accounting thing, I thought I couldn't go back. I think it was at a time people didn't have conversations around how it's okay to change your career. You start to think about, well, I've already done so much. Why would I lose it? I think at the time in my head, the better option was to stay miserable and hope that something will change. But it didn't. And then I got married, and then I had kids. So it wasn't going to change because I had to consider other people. At what point do I change my career when I've got kids who need to eat? Because it will mean me investing in something that should be going to somewhere else. So I stayed miserable for a very, very long time. And I have worked for many organizations, but I think before I got to where I'm working now, I think I've done probably 5 companies. And it was at this company where I'm at, 20 years into my work life, 20 years of misery, I might add. One of the CEOs was like, what are you doing in finance? And I was like, oh, it's what I did, And he goes, I don't think this is where you belong. And I felt it. I knew what he was talking about. And he says, I think we have a position coming up, and I think you'd be perfect for it. It was called Clients and Industries, and it was the first time that it was going to be in Zambia. In all the other of our firms, of the Big 4 that I work for, they do have it in, they're actually quite massive departments. And he said, I think you'd be great in it. And that's how things changed. And I told myself I didn't want to let this person down. And I found myself enjoying the work that I'm doing. I became deliberate about a lot of things. In terms of school, I had just put it aside, because if I didn't like the work that I was doing, and I was doing this work because of what I had studied, there was no way I was going to invest further in it because I was miserable, So I told myself I would find a way to now invest in the new thing that I was doing. So I got a bachelor's in business administration, which was different. I enjoyed it, and I've been enjoying the work that I've been doing since then. So this is how I am where I am. It's really been this, that, this, and finally here. And it's a great place to be. So one of the things that I did, and that I would encourage people to do, is have conversations. I think we've reached a stage in life, so to speak, where we're able to have very honest conversations about how we feel about our jobs, our mental state, which wasn't there before. What I did, I will tell you, is we would go to these meetings. Sometimes it would be a meeting for CFOs. I remember Zika at the time had this amazing forum for CFOs. And I went, and I could see all these CFOs, and I felt like a fraud. Because I'm thinking, what am I doing here? Like, look at these people. These people actually know their stuff, Judith. And I think I sat at the back. But at the end, like I said, I knew what my strength was. When it was time for networking, I was there. So I didn't know whatever it was that they were teaching and all that. But I was like, okay, hello, no, let's stay in touch. And all with people, we exchanged cards. And I told myself, I didn't just get those cards for no reason. I got in touch with those people. And there's a particular lady who was the CFO at what was Barclays then and all. And she said, we should meet up. She had just moved into the country. And we met up and we started having conversations. And she said something. She said, you know, I'm actually surprised that you're in finance. One of the things that I do with my group is I actually pick up on what people do, and I'm restructuring a lot of the stuff that they are doing. And she says, I can see you being a person who reaches out. I think you'd be in sales or marketing, but you need to be in a space where you're talking to people. Like, I can see you're so good at that. The way you engaged with all of us was just amazing. You know, she picked it up straight away. This is from one meeting. And I think it's important to find a safe space, even in your workplace. Be able to talk, to reach out, put your hand up. I am not coping. This is hard for me. I am not feeling like I'm in this space. This is what I think I need to be doing. But most importantly, as leaders, you need to be aware. We are so bent up on, well, I've got deadlines. Well, my KPCs are based on this. But the people who are helping you achieve their KPCs, are they really the right people for where you need to be? Where could they serve better? And who else should be with you who then, who is meant for that particular, you know, role that you are giving? I think conversations are key. It doesn't matter what you tell yourself, how amazing your strategy is. If you can't communicate it properly to the people who will understand it and are able to follow through the way you need them to follow through, it means nothing. So when I moved to Zambia, I found that the attitudes of the people were so different, okay? Now, this isn't me speaking, obviously, in general, that all companies are like that. This was my first experience. And we had people who were okay with going home at 15 because they could. There was no proper accountability. But I remember telling myself to say, if I was going to stay on top of my game, if I was going to have an opportunity to move to other places, I needed to be disciplined, even if it meant being disciplined on my own. We used to work like a long way away from where the residential areas were. So you can imagine, we had one car, a pool car, which needed to take us home. And at 15, 16, they would all be gone. And I would need to make a plan and find a way to find my own way home. First of all, I'm thinking, I don't need this. Then I'll think, actually you do, because you know you need to pay your rent. But it was so difficult. Those are the battles, you know, you had to keep going through over and over again. But because of that, my commitment and telling myself I would stick it out, I would do the right thing, even when no one was watching. My boss at the time offered me a car on my own because he knew that I was the only one who would stay back. Somehow the world just worked together and I was able to get a car and be able to, you know, to do the trek and all that. And then from there, that's when I came and I found a job at Deloitte. Now, it would have been so easy to fall into those bad habits before I moved to Deloitte, but I was glad that I didn't, because I think because of the attitude and telling myself I was going to be deliberate about doing the right thing, I was able to fit into exactly how Deloitte work, because they were professional. What you're doing is selling time, so you cannot faff about. Each and every hour you have to account for. So the fact that I had come from the initial mindset of when I had just started work was very, very helpful into coming into a multinational firm and all. So that was really helpful for me. So I've read many books in my life, most of them fiction. I love to be entertained. But there is one particular book, I don't even know what prompted a friend of mine to buy it for me. It's called Think Again by Adam Grant. Okay. The reason I've always enjoyed the fiction is because, you know, from the word go, it hits you, you're like taken and all. So what it is about this book, okay, it talks about how, you know, fire jumpers, These are the guys when there's a big forest fire. Most of the countries, you know, like Australia will have those. And there's a forest fire coming. And of course, it's all coming. It's going to be destroying stuff. So they have people who are dropped off from a plane at a very high point. And what those people are supposed to do is to kind of cut off the fire. So what they do is they cut a part of the trees and all. So these guys, there's like 20 of them. They're dropped off in this place. And they're running towards the fire because they're supposed to cut it off. They realize the fire is coming too quickly. Okay, and they won't make it. So they have to turn back, run up the hill to where it's safe, and they start running. So one guy tells them to say, he stops and he says, light a fire. Now they're not listening to that. So he lights a fire and he stays down and covers himself, okay? After some time, you know, the fire passes and he gets up. He's one of the few people that survived. So they were 20. He survived because he knew to light a fire. There's no way a fire can burn where a fire has already been, okay? Now, what it is about this story is that the one thing the fire jumpers are taught is to run for your life and hold on to your, you know, your gear. It's what will save you when things get bad. 2 other people survived. And even they survived because it took them a while. They were still running with their gear when what they needed to do was let go of it so that they could be light enough to run ahead of the fire. Everybody else who died still died with their gear, which didn't serve them any purpose. So it talks about how in situations, especially when it's a fight or flee situation, your first instinct is always do what I've always known and all that. And if we don't think even about the things that we truly believe, it doesn't mean because you think it's true or it has to be done. So these people, those who survived, did 2 things. They went against everything they've been trained to do, everything they believe. Now, this is not me saying, well, if you've been taught that this plus this is this, throw it aside. But there are certain things you need to think about all the time. And that book from the very beginning it was like so amazing. I couldn't believe I was reading this and I said, this is a true story. But it takes a lot, especially in that moment, to think, let me think differently. But it could be the difference between saving your life and not. But also in the workplaces, I think we have a lot of biases. We have a lot of things that we believe are true. Especially now you have people coming in. There's all these new ideas with globalization, with so much going on. We have access to so much information. But even with that, we still want to believe that what we believe is the gospel truth. And it's important sometimes to just think again. Maybe not. You widen your thinking so much more, and I think things are so much better. Think again, Adam Grant. That's my #1 book.